Hello.
Thanks for coming to our last new songs for the Butte Mining Camp Brown Bag. We're very happy to have Ben Larson of Philipsburg with us. We'll be talking today and then performing tomorrow night at the Chateau at 7, and then we'll be on the radio on Sunday morning. Time to be determined. Around 9. But Ben's been really into the research, and he has 2 songs from the new songs book that he's going to perform for us today. And I'm really excited, and I hope you are too. Let's give him a round of applause.
So, my name is Ben Larson. I'm from Philipsburg, and I'm just very, very excited to do this. I'm going to give a little bit of a background on myself first, because nobody here knows who I am except my wife. And 33 years ago today, I was born in Vermont.
Happy birthday.
And so thank you, that's where I grew up. I had this big plan growing up that I was going to be an architect, and I was going to go to Cornell, and I misread my application at Cornell. I got in, turns out I thought I didn't get in. I needed a safety school. At the time, MSU was the cheapest state school in the country. I'd never been to Montana before. I was just like, gotta go there. They've got architecture. So off I came to Montana when I was 17 and knew instantly that I wouldn't ever go back. And my first week at MSU, I'm just walking around, and this guy needed help moving a table, and I get to talking to him, and his name's Bill Clinton, like the president, but he's older, so he had it first. And he's the woodshop teacher at MSU, and he offered me a job, and I spent 7 years there working with him, learning how to build things, learning all the tools, just becoming somebody who can make things, and learning a bunch of useful repair skills and building skills, designing skills. I did end up getting my master's in architecture. I do not use it. When I finally graduated, all my friends went off to get architecture jobs, and I sold what little I had and bought a one-way ticket to Australia. I skipped a section. While I was in grad school, Bill helped me get a scholarship to go to Norway to study the stave churches, which are the oldest wooden buildings in the world. They're from about the 1100s. And getting to go there got me really into historic research, because my thing there was I had to go visit all these churches, meet people, research them, and then come back and do a museum exhibit. And the other thing that got me hooked on was traveling, hence why when I graduated I was like, I'm gonna go traveling. And so I go off to Australia, and I have no real plan. I've got my guitar with me, and I've got a bunch of skills, and I start meeting people, and I'm like, hey, I can build you a chicken coop if I can figure out metric. And one thing leads to another. The guitar always gets me into places, and then I start meeting people, and I'm like, hey, let's do cool things, and it's one of those things where you're always living uncertain. You don't know what's going to happen next, but then you start to roll with the punches, and you start to meet people, and that just steamrolls. And I make my way to New Zealand and Newfoundland, and eventually I end up in Spain working for somebody that I met in New Zealand. And I finish up my project there, and I'm walking down the street in Barcelona, and I run into a old teacher from Montana State. And we're like, this is crazy. We should have drinks or something. And we sit down, and she's like, I've got friends of friends who need a house built in Philipsburg. And I was like, cool, I've been there before, so I'll go off there. And she puts me in contact, and off I go to Philipsburg. My journey has come full circle back to Montana, and the job falls through. But I meet my now wife the very first night that I'm there, and so I'm like, oh, I can hang out here, and I don't have a job, so I start hanging out in the library, and there the librarian owns what's left of the ghost town of Hasmark, which is in the mountains east of Philipsburg. There's only one building left that's standing, and Hasmark went with the Algonquin mine, which is you can still see the remnants of. But the saloon is the only building left, and it's an old log building, and it was falling down, and And she's like, could you fix this? And I was like, well, I'll try. And so I taught myself how to do log work and stone foundations and chinking and everything. And I renovated the building so that it'll last another 100 or so years. And that got me into Montana history now. I'm back into and so Philipsburg, like Butte, has a lot of old buildings that need work. And it's sometimes the people can't afford to do like a faithful historic renovation, but they want to save as much as they can. And so I show them how to use old materials, how to clean things up. That's kind of become my niche in Philipsburg, is working on old buildings. And what I can't renovate, I tear down, denail, and reuse. And so that's what we ended up buying, the old town dump in Philipsburg, and cleaning it out and tearing down houses all over the valley and rebuilding it into our own house, all made out of reclaimed stuff. And so if that's not enough to fill your time, I've been a musician since I was 14. And my music is kind of like building. I like old things, but then you can't just always replicate it. So I try to interpret it and make it my own. I take a lot of different genres of music and mash them up into my own genres. One of the things when I was in Australia, I found out about Australian country music, which I didn't actually listen to American country music before. I found out about country in Australia, and then I came back and I was like, whoa, there's a lot here. And then you take in elements of bluegrass and rock and roll and hip hop and metal and all this stuff, and it creates this whole vibrant world of music that I like to draw out of. So that's me, and that's where I come from. Well, I stumbled into this project the way I stumble into everything. Christine over here was the artist in residence in Philipsburg this summer, and she saw us play, and there was an artist scheduled for this who had to drop out for health reasons, and so I got to be the fill-in. Because that's how my life works. Just kind of go with the uncertainty, and I come in here and I'm instantly overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information that is in this building. You can just go your whole life, and I'm just kind of looking at it like, I don't even know where to start. There's just so much, and I did do what I always do. I just procrastinate, and I started reading newspapers, and I love old newspapers. Like, the bathroom of our house is newspapers from 1957 that I found under the floor of a building I was tearing down, and we plastered them all over the walls, so there's always something to read in the bathroom. And there's articles in there like, are women inept? If we taught them science, would they be as good at science? There's like Willie Mays hitting himself in the leg with a foul ball. And so anyway, I love old newspapers, and so I start going down the rabbit hole of old newspapers in here, and you can do that for days. And it was fun to read like old local stories, like Betsy and Darlene visited from Hamilton, or there was one like, man builds boat in his barn, but the door isn't big enough. But then the part that always amazed me was the international news, right? In an era before the internet, before television, all this stuff, their international news was very good, particularly in Butte. Particularly the Montana Standard. Like, a lot of local papers may have had a little bit of national news, but Butte was on top of it. They were telling the news the day of. And as I kind of looked at this, and I looked at all this international news and how it started to hinge around Butte, I was like, that's why it's Butte America. It's things that happen globally resonated in Butte. Things that happen in Butte resonated globally. And so that was kind of my first take of, oh, that's where I can go with this. And so bear with me for a minute as we set the scene for 1917, right? And do the little time warp thing, and it's 1917, and we're here in Butte, and I'm a first grade level historian in this room. There might be some PhDs in here. So I'm gonna do what I can. If I do something egregiously wrong, you can throw tomatoes at me or whatever you brought for lunch. So it's 1917 in Europe. The Great War is happening. And it's not World War I, because that would have been very pessimistic to think that there would be a second one of these. It's the biggest war in human history, and it is absolutely engulfed Europe. Millions are dead, and they're at a stalemate. They've been in a stalemate for years with trench warfare. And the United States is actually neutral they're allies with Britain and France, but they don't want to get involved with this war. And so they start shipping food staples and whatnot to Europe. And the Germans are like, hey, that's kind of like you're part of the war. And the US is like, we're not, we don't want to be. But then the Germans start blowing up supply ships. And it starts kind of destabilizing the United States economy, because as this war's going on, the United States is like, well, this is a big market that we can't really sell to because they're too busy fighting. And so you've got that going on in one sphere. In the next sphere, you've got, this is the end of, this is kind of the last hurrah of the robber baron era. Your Carnegies, your Rockefellers, your Vanderbilts, and then specifically in Butte, the major copper kings. And Marcus Daly is dead at this point. He's been dead for 15, 16 years. But his company, Anaconda Copper, is obviously a behemoth and is producing about 1/10 of the world's copper at any given time. And wealth inequality in the United States is at a pretty big difference, right? And so you've got a lot of very rich people, or you've got some very rich people and a lot of very not rich people. And that is creating a lot of tension in the United States. And the major companies, backed by the politicians and stuff, are worried about a worker revolution, which you start to see as the unions become a little bit more extreme. And meanwhile, in Russia, it's February in Russia, and their wealth inequality is even worse than ours, right? The czars have ruled for 600 years. They do what they want. The peasants are barely scraping by. There's millions of them. And Russia comes into the Great War in defense of its ally, Serbia. And this is not popular among the Russian people, right? They need to come to the help of Serbia, but Russia is lagging way behind in industrial technology. And so they start going up against the German war machine, and they get the butts kicked, right? More Russians died in that first fight with the Eastern Front of World War I than any country in any war in history up to that point. And that really starts to turn the tides in Russia, because all the peasants are like, this is crazy. We don't want to go die for a country we don't care about. The czars are not listening to us. And then along comes Mr. Lenin and the Bolshevik Party. And they've been around for about 15 years, but they never had a way to really get over the top until the Great War. And so now they step in and they offer a solution like, hey, overthrow the leaders. And the Russian people are like, oh, we can do that? And they do, and it is March 8th, 1917, it is utter chaos in Russia. The Russian Revolution begins. And so sitting over here, and I'm reading about this in the newspapers here, and so now you put yourself back in the shoes of the barons and the people in charge of the United States, and this is their worst nightmare. They do not want a worker revolution in the United States. And their solution, which ties into lots of other solutions, is to join the war against Russia, because that puts their economy on a wartime footing. That means ramping up production. That means, like, we're gonna basically make everybody work so hard they don't have time to revolt. And so now you've got a picture of what's going on around the world. You got the Russian Revolution, you got the Great War. Now you're back in Butte. I'm gonna scroll down real quick. So production is ramping up. Come on in.
I've been sitting out there.
All right. Production is ramping up, and as copper prices rise, obviously the people in charge are making a lot of money, but that money is not trickling down to the workers. And entering the Great War is very unpopular in Butte, because most of these workers are immigrants, and they either don't want to go back to Europe to kill their relatives, or they are of the opinion like, hey, we literally uprooted our lives, moved across the world to get away from this. We don't want to be a part of this. So they're already like, what? This is dumb. We shouldn't be fighting this war, and now we're being told to work more, and we're not making any more. And in the rush for production, corners start getting cut. And that's when you get disasters like the granite speculator disaster. And that's June 8th, 1917. And a week later, the strike begins. So the strike, obviously, is what these songs were compiled for. And I sat there reading all this stuff, and I tried to put myself in the shoes of both sides. On one hand, you've got the miners thinking locally. Like, they're thinking like, hey, every day I want to go do my job, make enough money to survive, and survive, and come home every day, and not die. And it would be really nice if you could give us just a little bit more of the pie, if we could make some changes so that we don't die. Like that's the way they are thinking. Like that's their mindset. That's their paradigm. Like just a little bit more rights, a little bit of respect, a little bit of money, of profit sharing, whatever it takes. Like we'll keep working. Meanwhile, on the other side, you've got the barons, and they're backed by the government and the military, and they are thinking globally, and they're looking at the world from the point of view of the Russian Revolution and going, if we give an inch to these demands, that's a slippery slope to our heads being on pikes, like it is in Russia. And so they put their foot down, and they're like, not even a little bit. And you start to see this go back and forth. The workers are not thinking globally. They're not thinking like, hey, we want it all. It's like, no, we want a little bit, and you're not even getting us a little bit, and that's making them angry. And enter the IWW, Industrial Workers of the World. Started in 1905 by communists in Chicago at a time when communism had not yet gained the reputation of 2 decades later. And they start as most unions start, right? It's advocating for the worker, improving conditions, improving pay, whatnot. But as time goes on, as you see with any political party, extremists start to take over. And by 1917, the IWW is fighting with other unions like the Western Federation of Miners here in Butte, because the Western Federation of Miners is fairly moderate. That's their goals are still what they always were. But the IWW at this point, their slogan is to overthrow the rulers. And you start throwing that rhetoric around when the companies are looking at the Russian Revolution and people overthrowing the rulers, and they're like, no, this is bad. So you've got yourselves a little powder keg. This is Butte being a microcosm of what is happening throughout the entire world. So Frank Little comes to town, and he's like dynamite sitting on the coffee table. It's like, oh, he is already famous as an organizer, as a radical, and if he was the dynamite on the coffee table, his lynching was essentially the fuse. And so you have this big strike, and that's the history. That leads us to our songs. And so the first song that I picked today, it's called Oh You Wobblies. Pull out my guitar here. How many of you guys have been to these before? Everybody? Okay, good.
This is my first one.
This is your first one. Thanks, darling.
What brought you?
I married him.
All right. So, this is obviously the era before recorded music. At their protests, it's not like they press go on a speaker and blast out the songs. They have to learn them all. So in here there's the IWW songbook, the Little Red songbook, and that song's sung nationally. But then what brings us all here is the new songs of the Butte Mining Camp songbook, which is songs that are more localized. And they're either about Butte or concerning Butte, or they've changed some of the words to be for people specifically in Butte, and they're getting together, whether it's a rally, whether it's a protest, whether it's a riot, whatever, and they're singing these songs. And this first song that I picked doesn't actually mention Butte in the slightest. I think that is particularly because it's sung in Butte. They're singing, oh you wobblies, we're everywhere, like, we have friends in all these other places. It's like, it's known that we're in Butte because we're here singing this song. We're gonna sing about all of our friends. And the song is sung almost sarcastically. It is meant to be ironic. They're calling themselves pests. They're basically taunting the union, or they're taunting the company bosses. Hey, we're relentless. We're everywhere. We're coming for you. We got friends in every industry. We got friends all over the country, all over the world. Like, this song is meant to be sung as a group, as a bunch of people that are like in solidarity with each other, right? And it's kind of like a drunken anthem. It's like, we're all loud and we're proud and we're gonna stick it to you. And like, there's an exclamation point in the song, right? In the title of the song. And so I tried to pick it up in that manner of this song is loud, and I'm a loud person, so that's perfect for me. And the last line, when they say join the OBU is another name for the IWW, stands for one big union. So this is Oh You Wobblies. I've traveled north, I've traveled south, I've traveled east and west, and everywhere I've been, I've said the same old pest. Wobblies, wobblies everywhere, wobblies night and day, oh, week in and week out on the job and in the fray, oh. Hey, ho, hey, ho. You'll find them in harvest fields in North and South Dakota, picking fruit in Yakima and prisons picking oakum. You'll find them in the frozen northern Yukon and Alaska, walking on the dreary trails from North Alaska. Wobblies, wobblies everywhere, wobblies night and day, oh, week in and week out on the job and in the fray, oh. Hey, ho, hey, ho. They're in jails throughout the land, from New York State to San Francisco, building on the 70s, breezing so briskly. The lumberjacks are wobblies too, all through the western country, picking hops in sunny Cal, tobacco in Kentucky. Wobblies, wobblies everywhere, wobblies night and day, oh, week in and week out on the job and in the fray, oh. Hey, ho, hey, ho. They're in Spokane and Cheyenne, you'll find them in the jungle, beating their backs every day on the backs of bundles. They're organizing on the job from heaven to hell right through. The angels and the shovel stiffs have joined the OBU. Wobblies, wobblies everywhere, wobblies night and day, oh, week in and week out on the job and in the fray, oh. Wobblies, wobblies everywhere, wobblies night and day, oh, week in and week out on the job and in the fray. Hey, ho, hey, ho. Woo. All right. So that song, that song's loud and proud. That's the Saturday night. That's the we're gonna stick it to them. We're all sticking together. Like it's gonna be great. And then you get to the Sunday morning, the hangover, right? You get like last night you were like, I've got all these friends and we're gonna do it, and we're like, and then this morning you're waking up and you're getting out of bed and your eyes are bloodshot and your head is pounding and you've got this feeling of hopelessness, like, oh, I still either have to go risk my life in the mine, or I have to go to the picket line and not make enough to support myself, and I feel like a slave because I'm never getting paid what I'm worth, and I might die today. Like every single day they go to work, they don't know if they're gonna come home at all, and for every protest and riot where they felt like we're gonna make it, there were probably way more times where they felt like, yeesh, right? Like there's a weariness to it. So this next song that I picked is called "Darling, I'm Growing Old," and it is definitely that, like the miner is telling his wife, like, I'm shot, like my body's falling apart. I don't know if I'm gonna make it anymore. I'm just kind of hoping that I stick it out long enough for the next generation to come along and help move us forward. And he's weary and he's angry, and like the writer, so in the songbook, most of the songs are written by a person named Scotty. And you guys probably all know that. Nobody knows who Scotty is. I watched all the other talks. Nobody's got a clue. This one is written by just a slave, right? That gives the kind of the feeling of how the writer is feeling this song. And this is only a discovery I made yesterday, because when I was researching the song, I was researching the title, Darling, I'm Growing Old. If I figured out that it is, this song is, the part that's in our songbook is just a couple verses, not even close to the original. The original is called Silver Threads Among the Gold, and it was a very popular song, actually written in 1873 and recorded in 1903 by even Rexford and H.P. Danks. And the song was actually a very, very popular song, Silver Threads Among the Gold, and it was a love song. It was a song from a husband to his wife that's basically saying, like, I'm still gonna love you even when you're old and wrinkly, kind of thing. And it goes on for verses and verses and verses, and it's a barbershop quartet song. And it has nothing to do with the one that the Butte Miners chose, right? They took basically 4 lines from the chorus, and that's it. They changed the themes of the song. They made it about what I was talking about, the weary and pissed off and mad. And so I had to reference the original Silver Threads Among the Gold, even though it really has no bearing on what this song is. And so I'm sitting with this song, and it's dark and it's vengeful, and right, the smoldering fire of the writers coming through, and I couldn't help but think of the Star Wars quote that's like, fear leads to resentment, resentment leads to anger, anger leads to the dark side. And the author of this song is he's turning to the dark side, right? Like he's not digging this. And I started playing it, and some of my other musical influences came through, and I medleyed this song with another song that was written 70 years later by a band named Soundgarden. And that song was then covered in the 90s by a guy named Johnny Cash, who won a Grammy for it. And so I put these 2 songs together, and it felt good to have Johnny Cash be part of this, because he was very well known for being a proponent and singing about the working man and the forgotten man, the kind of person that obviously he was not yet born, nor was the guys from Soundgarden who wrote this when this stuff happened, but I would like to think that if it had, that would have been playing basically in the mine tunnels. They'd have been singing these songs. So I tried to draw from the anger and weariness of the miner and kind of the spirit of Johnny Cash, and the other half of the song, which is essentially about an imprisoned dog. And so that's Darling, I'm Growing Old with some Rusty Cage put in there. And it's dark, I won't lie to you. Darling, I'm growing old, so the toilet told his wife. Oh, Father Time has told me of my usefulness in life. Just tonight my master told me he couldn't use me anymore. Oh, my darling, don't you scold me when the wolf is at the door. To the scrap heap we are going when we're overworked and old. Showing silver thread among gold. To the scrap heap we are going when we're overworked and old. Oh, my darling, don't you once more told his wife, all my labor power I've sold, I'm nothing more in life. But though I'm dying of starvation, I'll shout with all my might to the coming generation, workers of the world unite. To the scrap heap we are going when we're overworked and old. When our weary heads are showing silver thread among the gold. To the scrap heap we are going when we're overworked and old. Oh my darling, don't you scold me, the wolf is at the door. You wired me awake and hit me with a hand of broken nails. You tied my lead and pulled my chain to watch my blood begin to boil. I'm gonna break my rusty cage and run. I'm gonna break my rusty cage and run. Too cold to start a fire, I'm burning diesel, burning dinosaur bones. I'll take the river down to Stillwater and ride a pack of dogs. I'm gonna break my rusty cage and run. I'm gonna break my rusty cage and run. Yeah. Cool. So, oof now. Yeah, that one's a little bit heavier, but that one I feel like it really gets at the feelings of what it was like then. Now, 106 years later, we can look back at history and be like, gosh, what a crazy time. I can't believe, can you imagine what that was like, the uncertainty and stuff. We know what happened next, but they didn't. They're looking at the world through the lens of they're working a terrible job with bosses who don't respect them. There's the biggest war in history is going on. There's worker revolutions going on. To get out of bed every day and approach the world with that mindset, you start to look at that uncertainty and be like, ooh, how were more of their songs not dark and whatnot like that? And so there's a lot of unhealthy ways to deal with that uncertainty and whatnot, and we still find that today. That's how I'm gonna loop this all back to now, right? We can look back at history and be like, oh, can't believe they went through that. We know how it worked out, but then we come into our own lives and we go, well, we have our own uncertainties in our future. We have our own problems that we don't know how they're gonna work out. And as artists doing this project, I'm looking at the history and I'm learning the history and I'm trying to tell you guys about the history, but I'm not just regurgitating it, I'm trying to interpret it and make it something that we can apply in our daily lives. And so I'm gonna play this last song. This is one of my songs, and it's a song I wrote to deal with that same kind of uncertainty of looking at the world and feeling like your dreams are always one step away of being like, there's a lot of big things going on that I cannot affect, being mad at people around you, right? Exasperated, frustrated, and so it's a very dark place to come from writing a song, but this is the most positive song I think I've ever written. I am gonna have to read the words because it's like singing you an essay. And so, and just like we can look at how they overcame their obstacles and how Butte became what it is today from what it was then, well, I think we can apply that to some of our own problems. And this song's called "The Getting There Blues," about the idea that sometimes it just seems like you're never getting there. You always want to be there, but you're never actually getting there. And I wrote the song 6 years ago, so there's a couple references that are slightly outdated, but. I got the getting there blues. It takes so long for all my dreams to come true. Been trying so long out on my own. Got the while I'm getting there blues. I'm talking about those getting there blues. I get them every day about the time I read or watch the news. They're always talking about guns and violence and rapes and riots, and I start to wonder whether they're making any progress at all. I mean, the outlook is always so morbid. We're always on the lookout for the next problem, the next threat. We seem to forget about all the stuff in life that we actually have pretty darn good. Like really, and today in the world, we have a lot of things really darn good, and we often forget about them. We got fluffy white pillows and portable speakers. We got sports we can play, just watch from the bleachers. We got refrigerators and toilets and cable TV and streaming movies that come right to your screen. And it's hard to not enjoy all that. But then you got all these other big problems, and you start to wonder, like, God, it takes a while. It takes a while to earn the money. It takes a while to earn a living. I mean, that's why they're called the Getting There Blues, because it takes so long for all our dreams to come true. I mean, can you imagine a place where you can say whatever you want to say at any time of the day? You can carry a gun in your belt. You can congregate without a permit. You have the access to still the cheapest gasoline on the planet. You have the widest array of food and clothing options in human history, like by far. And you have millions upon millions of open acres of land to visit, recreate on. And you can ask any reasonable question, and often very unreasonable questions, to a little device that fits in your hand and beams information across thousands of miles in just seconds. Like not even seconds, but like 0.012 seconds. Like it's going to space, right? And back, and it's mind-boggling, and it's all around us. And it's being held together by folks named Bob and Randy and Prashna and Jose and Eddie and Josephine and a bunch of names I can't pronounce, and a bunch of people who often don't even speak the same language. So just the fact that it exists at all is a testament for everybody's hard work for as many generations as we've had generations. I mean, we could have messed this all up back in the Stone Age, or a lot of times in between then and now. We made it this far, didn't we? I mean, anytime a system is this complicated, of course there's going to be confusions and snags and slowdowns and hiccups. We're not going to understand everything every time, and sometimes we're going to get confused, and sometimes it's going to feel like we're held back by idiots, and yes, sometimes it seems like there's too many of us and we're just clogging things up and you just want to scream and rampage. But I need everybody to remember something. You are never stuck in traffic, you are traffic. So the next time that red light is holding you back, I want you to take a deep breath, maybe sing this song. I got to get there blues. It takes so long for all my dreams to come true. Been trying so long out on our own. Got the while I'm getting there blues. I mean, we're living in the most complicated society in human history, or potentially the universe for that matter, and that means there's going to be things that we do not all understand. Like, we all have a little bit of knowledge that we contribute to the collective knowledge, but nobody ever knows all of it. I mean, like, I have no idea how a microphone works, or a microwave, or an iPhone, or to be more relevant to today, how the fact that you can take dirt out of the ground over there and modify it all up to build all of this. Like literally everything that we have came out of the ground as dirt or as a plant, and it creates our entire world. Like there's no other source for things. And I really don't know how that works, but certain people do, and I'm very glad that they do. Because otherwise we wouldn't have these things. Right? And people know how to solve problems, even if they're just little problems. And you fix all those little problems, they add up to solving big problems. And believe me, there's a lot of big problems to solve. But remember that just because we haven't solved these big problems does not mean that we will never solve them. I'm going to say that again. Just because we have not solved the big problem yet does not mean we will never solve them. And I'm going to make an analogy to putting a man on the moon. Right? Because there was one point not that long ago in some of your lifetimes that there were people sitting down here looking at the moon and going, now, how are we going to do that? But they did it, and they did it with working together, and it was not a problem that could be solved alone. So if you take that into account, think of all the gigantic world-ending problems that we solve now, and they're all kind of like putting a man on the moon. Like it might happen, but it's not gonna happen tomorrow, and it's not gonna happen all by yourself. So with that in mind, let's fasten our seatbelts. Start chewing one bite at a time, and remember that we all get the getting there blues, but that does not mean that our dreams will never come true. I got the getting there blues. It takes so long for all my dreams to come true. Been trying so long, we're all on our own in this cool building, in this really cool city, in this pretty cool state, in this great nation, in this gem of a planet hurtling through a gigantic universe, singing the while we're getting there blues. Oh, it's kind of a little manifesto too, but I think that's a good way to wrap up. Like trying to put ourselves in the mindsets of the people who were singing these historic songs. Obviously, I'm never going to be in their head. I'm just trying to interpret. But I think that there's positives and negatives that you can pull out of uncertainty and out of difficult situations. And so hopefully that's a takeaway from this. This has been a real honor to do this project and do all this research and talk to all you guys. And tomorrow I'm going to play these songs and a bunch more songs at the Clark Chateau at 7. So my name is Ben Larson. Thanks for coming. If you want to talk more, I got nothing to do. So.
Does anyone have any questions?
It's a treat. You're in for a treat. Yeah, I don't get to go tomorrow because I have to coach volleyball.
It's alright, she gets to hear my songs all the time.
Oh,